So, what if I told you that America First, the whole movement that was supposed to be about ending these forever wars?
Under Trump, we will have no more wars, no more disruptions, and we will have prosperity and peace for all. No more wars, no more disruptions. We will have prosperity and we will have peace. I am the candidate of peace. I am peace.
Stop the cap. Stop the cap right now. Stop the cap.
Is being completely redefined in real time. Right now, they're out here trying to justify regime change and insane $1.5 trillion defense budgets. Wait, so America First just means America First to show up at your border. Got it.
Is there anything Trump can do, Michael Knowles, that you would say, I condemn it, and you hop off the Trump train, or are you going to tickle his taint for the rest of your fucking life?
No, there have been plenty of Trump policies that I've criticized because he's only right about 99.78% of the time. So the First Step Act, I thought, was a misstep. But I would say the rest. Excuse me. I would say the rest of the administration has been very successful.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Today, we're reacting to a wild debate on Piers Morgan Uncensored. We've got Michael Knowles, who's out here trying to sell us on conservative imperialism, while Dave Smith and Kulinski are absolutely tearing the mask off this dude. Let's dive in.
Dave Smith, let me start with you. Welcome back to Uncensored.
Thank you.
There's a lot going on. I decided to have a week off after Christmas. Big mistake. Never have a week off in the Trump administration. It seemed like all hell was breaking loose, and yet if you park the rhetoric, which can be very incendiary on all sides, and you cut to the presumed ideology of what Trump is trying to do here, I do see the argument. I may not agree with all of it, but I see the logic of what he's trying to do and why he thinks it's in America's interest. And that applies to whether it's Venezuela and getting rid of Maduro, or whether it's the Iran situation, and so on. Do you see the logic, even if you don't agree with it all?
No.
Okay.
Piers, it's as you said, Donald Trump can say America First means whatever I say it means, but if America First meant one thing to everybody who's ever uttered the phrase, and then he wants to change that to mean America First means regime changes all around the world, huge, enormous, unthinkable bloated defense budgets like he just requested from Congress. And if he's going to think that none of his supporters are going to have a problem with that, or that they're all just going to change their views because he decided to change his, I think he's going to find out how well that works for him in the midterms this year. And I think it's going to be a disaster. And, obviously it's true, Piers, as you said, and we all know Donald Trump will say all types of crazy things and then never follow through with that. But he also just asked Congress for a $1.5 trillion defense budget. And that, to me, does indicate that he is anticipating a real deal war coming up, or at least the possibility of it. And if he means the things that he says, I don't exactly know how you do that. I don't know how you say we run Venezuela and we'll dictate who the next regime is and we'll dictate where the oil goes without at least an effort of like 100,000 troops. I'm not even sure that would be enough to do it. So it's unclear what exactly the next move is going to be, and that's really when we'll find out what he's going to do. But no, Piers, the idea that we're 38 or maybe 39 by the end of the show trillion dollars in debt right now. We have major problems in this country, and we have a hot war raging on in Europe, which is a proxy war between the entire West and the biggest nuclear armed power in the history of the world.
See, this is what I'm talking about. Dave Smith is out here doing the Lord's work. Is it really America First to be flirting with multiple wars while the country is sitting on $39 trillion in debt? $39 trillion. That's not a number. That's a catastrophe. You're telling me we're putting America first by sending more bodies into conflicts that have nothing to do with this? It's a complete hustle. You can't claim to care about the price of eggs while requesting a $1.5 trillion defense budget. That's some expensive omelet, Michael. It's a semantic trap. If America First can be twisted to mean whatever Trump wants, it eventually means absolutely nothing.
Donald Trump proudly and aggressively talking about meddling in all sorts of foreign affairs. Is there a contradiction or hypocrisy or even a betrayal of voters going on here?
Now watch Michael Knowles try to gaslight us into believing America has always been a global empire.
Not at all. First of all, Venezuela is in our own backyard, and it's been the policy of the United States in 1803 to manage the Western Hemisphere. So that, that's a cornerstone of American foreign policy. I think it is charming that Dave is defining America first in the way that he prefers, and I think there are plenty of people who wish to do that. But Dave, though a very popular podcaster, never won a presidential election, and Trump has been clear on what he means by America first, the political movement that he built, that people voted for in his coalition since the beginning. President Trump campaigned the first time around on destroying ISIS. So obviously that does not mean that America's only going to look inward. President Trump has carried out attacks, military operations that were extremely successful in Iran, in Syria, in Afghanistan, obviously in Venezuela. He's been talking about taking Greenland and even invading America's evil top hat, Canada, though I think he's mostly joking about that one, since the beginning. So that's what that means. And what it comes down to is that America is a global empire. We just are. People can be upset about that, but unless your geopolitics comes strictly from Reddit, if your geopolitics actually comes from history, you recognize that we've been an empire since the Louisiana Purchase, okay? And we've been a muscular global empire since the Second World War.
He really has the nerve to bring up the Louisiana Purchase from 1803. Like, are we for real? He's reaching back 200 years to justify modern-day meddling. He's basically saying, hey, we bought some land from Napoleon once, so we should be the world's policeman forever. The logic is absolutely chopped. This confirms exactly what the Global South has been saying for decades. Neocolonialism isn't a conspiracy theory anymore. It's openly admitted policy.
So President Trump's vision, I think, actually rejects two extremes. It rejects a conservative isolationism, and it rejects a liberal internationalism, and it posits a conservative imperialism that says that we are going to recognize our role in the world, but we are going to pursue that role in limited ways with America's interest at heart. So there's been no regime change in Venezuela. We're talking about regime change in Venezuela. The regime is still in place. What we did was depose the leader. We left the vice president in place, and we said, act in a way that is appropriate in accordance with the law and our interests, or we're going to kill you. That's very different than a Bushy-era neocon regime change in Iraq. Even when we're talking about Iran, the Trump administration has not gone in a particularly overt way yet. But even there, we would be talking about a restoration of the Pahlavi regime, most likely, that goes back to 1925. So I grant there are all sorts of risks to interventions, but we're the global empire, and frankly, even the American Revolution comes out of wars of global empire. It comes out of the 7 Years' War, which itself was a derivation of the War of Austrian Succession. To pretend that we don't have a role in geopolitics is to ignore all of American history.
Knowles calls it classical international law, but let's be real. It's just the law of the jungle. If being a global power gives you the right to act however you please, then international law isn't law, it's just a suggestion for the weak.
It's going to be World War III. Actually, Maduro's going to end up in a New York courtroom, and he's been got rid of. Everyone seems to agree that's a good thing for not just the Venezuelan people, but the world. No American troops died in what was an incredibly efficient surgical military strike to get him out of there.
Look at the prejudice in this framing. Piers and Knowles are calling the hit on Venezuela surgical and efficient simply because no American troops died. Oh, surgical? To these empire cucks, the people living there are just background noise. They aren't real people. They're just collateral. It's the height of arrogance to call a violation of sovereignty efficient because you didn't get blood on your own shoes.
By the way, he bombed fishing boats from Venezuela, Trinidad and Tobago, and Colombia. He just did the regime change in Venezuela. He bombed Yemen and Somalia and Nigeria and Iran. He's threatening Greenland and Panama and Canada and Cuba and Mexico. And you sit there the whole time and act like it's okay.
This narco-terrorist label is just the new WMD.
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
Same old script. It's a justification to snatch resources for the Epstein class. They claim they're saving people while bombing their fishing boats. Pure hypocrisy. They create the chaos, call it a crisis, and then swoop in to fix it by taking everything. Now we're getting to the main event. This is the moment where the whole house of cards starts to wobble. Kyle Kulinski finally snaps, and I mean really snaps, because Knowles is sitting there refusing to condemn a single thing Trump does. It's like he's got a script he can't deviate from. This is where the mask really falls off.
And you sit there the whole time and act like it's okay. Is there anything Trump could do, Michael Knowles, that you would say, I condemn it, and you hop off the Trump train, or are you going to tickle his taint for the rest of your fucking life?
No, there have been plenty of Trump policies that I've criticized because he's only right about 99.78% of the time. So the First Step Act I thought was a misstep. But I would say the rest. Excuse me. I would say the rest of the administration has been very successful. What's your problem?
No way. 99%? That is actually unreal. I'm telling you guys, these people are just in a cult. Daddy Trump will tell them anything, and they will say, how high?
My problem is that you're a cuck, and you're a hack, and you're not an independent thinker, and you're meat-riding Trump.
Why do you say
that?
You
know that what he's doing in imperialism,
and
you don't care.
I just answered your question, and I corrected
Congratulations. You rented your brain to a war criminal, pedophile, rapist. I hope you're happy.
A war criminal, pedophile, rapist? You brought up a point. You brought up international law, and you made a very false point, a dumb point, which is that international law began only a few hundred years ago. I corrected you, and I pointed out that the international law is part of the Western tradition. Excuse me one second. It goes back to antiquity. It's a principle of the jus gentium. And then you said, well, international law has failed because of the League of Nations failure, which I think is actually undermining your argument and proving my point and proving Trump's point, because the liberal internationalism that was established by people like Woodrow Wilson did, in fact, fail, which is why we need to restore an older and more classical conception of the international order, which is precisely what Trump's doing. So I think you've hoisted yourself your own petard, and then you just make a lot of vulgar sort of non sequiturs because you don't have a leg to stand on.
Are you a political analyst, or are you just checking the weather in Mar-a-Lago? Kyle hit the nail on the head. It's meat riding on an industrial scale. It's actually embarrassing to watch. This reveals the absolute state of the MAGA movement. Trump could literally tell them he's invading Canada, and they'd find a way to justify it.
All right, let me bring in...
Let me ask you this question. Hold on, Piers. Let me ask him a question real quick. Tell me the name of the Minister of Defense in Venezuela.
I don't know. Whatever his name is.
Well, and that's the problem, is that you're advocating for a
something.
regime change. You don't know the first thing.
I didn't. I just said the opposite. I argued against a regime change.
That's crazy. Like, for real? Knowles would spend an hour explaining how it's actually classical internationalism. When you rent your grain out like that, you aren't a patriot. You're just a total cuck for an empire that's bankrupting you. It's a sickness. The logic is completely chopped.
This is what I meant when I said to Dave that I understand the argument. I may not agree with all of it, but I do understand the logic to what Trump is doing here. Do you?
No, because we don't have a right to act like this around the world. We're supposed to be a nation among nations, not a nation above nations. And they used to at least lie to us in the past and say that this is good for the world and we're spreading freedom and democracy. Now they don't even bother to lie. Now it's naked, rank, disgusting imperialism where they say, we're going to take the oil. And the point is that we're going to take the oil. We're going to take the minerals. We're going to take the precious metals. We're doing this for our corporations. We're doing it for the Epstein class, the billionaires. And this, to piggyback on what Dave Smith said, is frankly not what many of the MAGA voters thought they were signing up for. They thought America First actually meant America First. By the way, you also replaced the Maduro regime with the Maduro regime. Congratulations on that. It's also been now a week straight of pro-regime protests. Now you have roving gangs of Venezuelan militias that are kidnapping Americans. But again, I come back to the fundamental point, which is if you sign on to stuff like this, you're saying might makes right and the law of the jungle is back. What you're saying is China has a right to go into whatever smaller country they want and depose the leader and say we're doing it because we can and we have the right to do it and we have bigger guns and there's nothing you can do to stop it. So they're never going to address that fundamental question, which is why do we have a right? Do we actually believe in international law, or was that all a joke? Are we rolling the clock back to the 1700s and the 1800s and we're going super primitive style here?
Man, at the end of the day, we have to wake up and realize that if we don't start pushing back, and I mean really, truly pushing back against these high-on-power cultists who think they own the moral high ground, we are straight up plunging this world into absolute irreversible chaos. See, here's the thing. If we keep telling the world that international law is just a joke that only applies to the little guys, We're basically inviting a total nightmare. We're out here setting the stage for Russia, China, and Iran to play by those same primitive rules. And trust me, nobody wants to see what happens when the law of the jungle meets a global economy. It's not a movie, it's a recession with a side of fallout. Do we really want to roll those dice? It's a dangerous game. We're effectively putting a stick in our own bicycle spokes and then acting shocked when the pavement hits us in the face. I gotta give a huge shout out to Dave Smith and Kyle Kulinski for really dismantling all this empire talk and calling out the hacks in the room. They brought the receipts and didn't let up. They kept the pressure on until the masks weren't just slipping, they were on the floor. They really had Knowles out here reciting the 1803 terms and conditions like we wouldn't notice. That's crazy. But let me know what y'all think in the comments. Are we actually a nation among nations, or are we just a nation above nations until the bill finally comes due? Because right now, the mask is off, the logic is looking pretty chopped, and the bank account is screaming for help. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more deep dives into the madness where we actually look at the receipts, do me a favor and hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one. I'm out. Peace.